I want to go to the things that don't make sense here in a moment, but I want to ask you just kind of a personal question. You fly a heck of a lot more than I do. I mean, how do you feel? You know what's going on here. You've personally heard the stories from an air traffic controller of just how understaffed it is and how close things can come. I mean, we've all heard, things that are released out publicly, but I'm sure you have knowledge of things more on the inside too. How safe have you felt out there, knowing we haven't had a crash like this in the U.S. for about 15 years, but just so many close calls?
I never feel safe when I go up for a multitude of reasons. I mean, first of all, I in knowing the mechanical issues that happen with planes and the mechanics, again, being assigned to these airports and in
Hmm.
this huge industry and knowing uh, who's working on the planes. And, there's been a lot of stories recently, obviously, about issues with how planes are built. I mean, I'm always concerned. And then knowing the issues with the tower in terms of lack of individuals there
Hmm.
to cover as air traffic control, it's always concerning. And I fly all the time.
Hmm.
Uh, but I've never really seen, personally exactly a close miss,
Hmm.
but I'll tell you what, I can't tell you how many times I literally look out the window and I see a plane right there, and I keep thinking, "Aren't we kinda close?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've thought that many times, and then, we'll ascend way high or something, but no, I'm always concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very just because there hasn't been a crash like this in a long time doesn't mean that we're not going to start to see a lot more of them. One of the sort of off-topic things, one of the strangest things I think I've ever seen, it was back in Wichita, and I'm guessing you've probably seen this too. When you're sitting at a rail yard or at a rail crossing, and you see these commuter jets, like the American Eagle or the whatever it was, on the trains, just the fuselages going down the tracks. It's a very weird sight to see. And then you add in all of the issues that we've been seeing from many of the companies, Boeing and such, on the quality control of their products. It's a disconcerting thought. Tell me more about your concerns. This was obviously not a mechanical issue, as far as we know, with the American Airlines or the American Eagle plane. But what are your concerns? What are some of those things that trouble you about the mechanical aspect of it, of who's servicing these planes at their respective airports?
Oh, I'm always troubled by that because you have individuals that, um ooh, I've gotta be careful. But you have individuals that, um, maybe are not as attentive as they should be.
Hmm.
I'll tell you right now, my, stepfather was a beach mechanic
Hmm.
for 30 plus years,
Okay.
and, the of course, stories, I'm just talking personally,
Yeah.
that I heard regarding that. I mean, you have people that drink on the job, you have people that, are late, you have things that are overlooked because they're late, you have things are overlooked because they get distracted and then they go back, and where did they start in at? It's sort of like any job, except for now you're talking about planes
Hmm.
and plane safety. And then you have, the double checks that are supposed to be done, thank goodness. I mean, I saw a lot of cases working. I'll give you a specific one. This was an individual who is a baggage handler, and they're responsible for uploading payloads. In other words, how much baggage, how many people are on here, and then the pilot has to use the amount of weight they have in totality on their plane to calculate how they're going to land.
Hmm.
They're doing all their figures, the velocity, everything that's involved with landing a plane. A big part of that is how heavy is your plane.
Hmm.
And this individual, this was one of the cases I worked on, this individual uh, did put thousands of pounds off in terms of what they inputted the payload to be, Tony. Thankfully, it was caught by a pilot that it just didn't make sense to him, or he would have wrecked the plane
Hmm.
because his calculations would have been completely off. It's those types of things that I think a lot of people don't understand. These just individual humans are supposed to make sure they get just right to keep us safe in the air.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's humans, and that's the big part about this. And if you have humans that are out there doing this job, and they're not the most qualified or the most professional or ethical, or aren't in a mind state to do their job correctly, that gets pretty dangerous. Is there really a lack of oversight when it comes to that area of air travel in the United States, where these things are just allowed to continue on over and over and over, and nobody does anything about it? Is it oversight, or is it again a staffing issue there where we'll take you if you have a pulse and have a remote knowledge on how to do this, or we'll train you, and you're getting trained by somebody else who may not be the most qualified to train anyone.
Yeah, I think it's a combination again, Tony. You have so many people that probably are not doing a great job at their job. Like I said, if you're a baker and you're not doing the best job, all I have to worry about is, my bread not tasting good.
Hmm.
But this is talking about our safety.
Yeah.
So you have issues with that. But I think really the biggest issue that we're talking about here is numbers,
Yeah.
and there just not being enough people that are qualified to be in the tower
Hmm.
and that are in the towers, combined with people that are overseeing the safety mechanisms on that plane and
Hmm.
making sure everything's functioning.
Let's go back to talking about the actual crash itself and the parts that don't seem to add up very well as of yet. Granted, as of our recording, we're literally about 2 days in to this. And like anything where there's a massive tragedy, it's kind of a fog of war. And I think we're just kind of starting to get out of that as the investigations begin. But let's talk about what doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. I mean, granted, we have the air traffic control towers, they have the black boxes now, and we can see, the flight path. We can hear the radio recordings of how that all went down, and on the radar and everything, it shows exactly where these planes are at. So how did this happen? But that helicopter, I think that's the biggest question everybody has. This helicopter, as far as I can tell, and I'm no way an expert in any of this, it was in a forward motion, and it was like bumper cars. I'm not trying to be crass, but it was like it's going forward, and it looks like it just rammed into the tail of the plane. If you're in the front of the aircraft and you're flying this thing, it was not a foggy night. You would have been able to see there's an airplane directly in front of you. I don't quite get any of that. I don't think any of us quite get any of that. What's your take on just the bizarreness of how this even happened?
Well, I had a question right off the bat: is why are we doing night ops in a flight path over the
Yeah.
Potomac? So I understand that they need to practice where they could possibly be called on to defend our nation's capital, et
Hmm.
cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But why are we over the Potomac in the flight path when all of us know, anybody who's flown into DC, that's exactly the path? And that is the problem I have with the whole thing. I mean, this is a training exercise.
Hmm.
Um, I just, it's a head shaker, right? So, first of all, who made the decision in command, the command staff level, to do these training exercises over the Potomac where planes come and go constantly?
Yeah.
Anybody who's been in and out of DCA, you said you were.
Hmm.
I constantly flew out of there. I was assigned to headquarters.
Hmm.
Uh, and oh my goodness, I just, that was the first mind boggling thing.
Yeah.
Because when you take off, then the next one takes off, then people are landing. It is a zoo
Yeah.
at DCA in a very limited space.
Yeah.
It's not like DFW with, I believe now they're up to 11 landing strips, and they're so far apart over acres and acres of land. This is like a funnel.
Yeah.
And so I think there needs to be a lot of questions asked at this command staff level. How did this even line up that you got these two bumper cars, as you called them, in the same area at the same time? Is mind boggling. And then you dial down from that, Tony. You have three very experienced pilots. We now know, it's a female that was a pilot.
Mhm.
She has not been named, but her face and her photo is out there,
Mhm.
and you wonder how and the crew was very experienced, how the lights on a plane that are so visible could not have been detected even if you're flying instruments.
Yeah.
One person isn't assigned to look. My son's a pilot.
Mhm.
Um, he says that's exactly what you have going on. You have instruments and he's not a helicopter pilot. He's fixed wings, but you have people running through instruments, and then you have other people looking
Mhm.
for this reason. It's mind-boggling,
Yeah.
really, Tony. And
I'm not going down any conspiracy angles or anything like that because I don't know. I just don't feel like there is a conspiracy here, but maybe I'm wrong. It is just mind-boggling that you could have something like this happen. I mean, and the question, who said, okay, we're going to do this training over here? Who authorized that? I mean, when I'm looking at it just as a layman, I go, well, it's because they've always done it. It's not like this is anything new to say, okay, we're going to be flying over. They're there all the time. But I mean, with the amount of close calls, why? I guess the bigger question is why hasn't anyone said, hey, maybe we should change our flight path of these helicopters and not go through an active landing zone for a commercial airport?
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And my understanding, and I am not a helicopter expert, I'm going to put that out there
Hmm.
right now. But my understanding with this Black Hawk, and maybe all Black Hawks, and my understanding of this is from my son
Hmm.
and from a helicopter pilot that's currently in Guam. That's a good friend of ours. That obviously, information from him. Blackhawks are meant to be stealthy, by the way.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be like a commercial airline jet.
Yeah.
So now you have a stealthy helicopter, you know, uh, in an area with a bunch of planes
Yeah.
flying around. It just doesn't make sense to me, because I think you could still practice your training in an area other than the Potomac, where people are landing and flying
Yeah.
and taking off there.
I guess I don't understand that. Why? Why are we doing this there? That to me just there's plenty of airspace. I mean, obviously it's a very busy area of the country, but it's like let's pick the busiest, most likely place where we could have an accident take place. And again, I'm wondering if, like a lot of things, sometimes it's a lot simpler than it is complex. I just wonder if it's one of those things. Well, we've been doing it for so long, we haven't had an accident yet like this, so let's keep doing it.
I agree with you, Tony. I always go back. I say this time and time again. It's usually Occam's razor. It's not this huge conspiracy. Nobody wanted to die. This
Yeah.
is likely not some sort of, death wish for anybody involved in this situation. It's just the routineness and monotony of training that you do over and over again, and you seldom change what you did before if nothing bad happened. You can bet this is going to all change.